Yeah.
I think they're up to no good. I don't trust them.
Your hand's still sore from last week?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Next time we should let you ride in the actual car and not in the truck.
I want to ride shotgun. Ride shotgun. Absolutely.
Honestly, we're probably both in the trunk at this point.
It's a little cramped.
All right, let's do this. Hello and welcome to Talk Heathen. I am your host today, Vi La Bianca, and with me is Eric Wells. Hello, Eric.
Hi there.
So Eric is where do I have my notes for you? Here you are. You're the support group director for Recovering from Religion.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. What does that entail?
Recovering from Religion is a 10 years old and nonprofit organization, and it's all run by volunteers. And what we really do is help folks. We find ways and provide ways for folks who are struggling with their doubts or even struggling with non-belief, whether it's in their own minds or in their community, to find a place to vent and get out what's going on in their heads. Mm-hmm. So we have the chat line and we have online chat, and we have the hotline that folks can call into 24/7.
It's almost like praying, but there's someone actually on the other end, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not going off into the ether. It's physical people who care about you and trained and want to talk to you. And then we have peer support groups, and that's what the side of it that I run. And we've got support groups all across the nation, soon to be all across the world, where it's an in-person and very private group of people, gathering of people to just offer support to one another. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a good friend of mine, Alex, in Springfield, Missouri. We started up a support group 4 years ago, RFR support group out there, and people from all backgrounds and all religions have been coming through, and we've helped to alleviate a lot of the pain and suffering that comes out of your doubts and leaving religion.
Yeah, because a lot of the time it feels like people who are making those steps are making them by themselves, or at least they feel like they are.
Yeah.
And they can't really talk about it to the people in their community, especially if it's a faith-based community.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Springfield, Missouri is exactly that. And when I came out of religion about 10 years ago, when I realized I was an atheist, I felt so incredibly alone mm-hmm. and had no idea where to go to. And if there was a group like this that was available, the depression and the suffering that I went through would have been lessened by a whole lot.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then I know that the Hotline Project is run by volunteers. Is that correct?
That's
so
absolutely
anybody
right.
can call in and be like, "Hey, I want to help with this."
Yeah, we do need volunteers. Absolutely. So not only do we have opportunities for folks who are doubting to find some relief and get and vent, but we also have opportunities for folks who can help with talking with other people, not only in the chat line, but also in support groups to give back in that sense as well. And for the last 4 years, my friend and I, Alex, we've been working with the support group, and I feel like I've gotten so much more out of it being a leader than I actually put into it.
Yeah. I feel like I similar feels for this show. It's like,
yeah,
I just
absolutely.
get a lot out of being able to talk to people and kind of sharing that burden, because it's hard. It's a hard process to come out of religion.
Yeah, hear phone calls. I've been a fan of Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience for a long time.
Yay.
And I hear the phone calls coming in about people who are hurting and are in a lot of pain with their doubt and the community that isn't there to support them. And so this is what Recovering from Religion is there for.
You step in.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then for folks who need more professional help, because the chat line, the hotline, and the support groups are peer support.
Right. It's not like licensed therapists.
Correct. Yeah. For folks who need more professional stuff, we have the Secular Therapy Project, and those are screened therapists who use evidence-based therapy, and they come to the table, come to their work without any biases of religion or what have you. Because I remember when I was struggling going through this, went to see a therapist, and I bounced around from religion to religion, starting in Baptists and ended up in paganism. And I talked
Yep.
I talked to a therapist and kind of was like going through the logic about, oh, this just doesn't make sense. Yeah, paganism doesn't make sense. And he's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. However, this guy named Jesus, I'm like,
oh no.
Fuck you.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it just was so ridiculous.
You're so right. Paganism makes no sense.
Yeah.
But I have this book, you see. Oh,
but I have this one invisible friend. Your deities, your multiple deities, that doesn't make sense at all. But my one does.
My one does.
So yeah, that's the Secular Therapy Project, and they all can be resourced through the recoveringfromreligion.org website.
Okay, and we will have that information, all of those links in the description, and the hotline number is on the lower third right now.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I'm really excited.
Yay! Okay, so we've got a couple announcements, and then we'll jump into calls. So January 5th, 2020 is the first episode of a new old show starring Jenna Belk, Jen Aldrich, and myself. So that's going to be talked about a little bit more in the upcoming weeks. You may have heard whispers and rumors around, but that's going to be super exciting. So we're excited to get that.
Is that all you can tell us about it?
That's all I want to tell.
Okay, I'm kind of excited. I want to hear more.
Exactly. That's
when do I need to tune in again?
This is January 5th.
Okay.
It's going to be airing. We're alternating with nonprofits. So we're going to be airing after AXP.
It'll have its own YouTube channel?
It'll have its own YouTube channel.
Oh.
All of its own stuff, merch and everything. And then April 24th to 26th, so we're jumping a little bit into the future here, but Court 2020, which is a conference on religious trauma, is being held in Vancouver. And RFR is part of that, yes?
Yeah, a big part of it, absolutely. A lot of our representatives are going up there and giving talks because... with the support groups and the chat line and the secular therapists all kind of converging, we have seen so much religious trauma come through this organization just from the people that have expressed what's been going on in their own community and their own head. Yeah, and even me coming out of being a Baptist when I was 16, stopped being a Baptist when I was 16, I'm still struggling to pull some of that shit out that comes that pops up every now and then. It's like, oh, why am I thinking this way? This doesn't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it really, in instances like that, it really does help to have other people who have experienced similar things because they aren't through the process of deconstructing either fully, but they may have gotten that piece.
Right.
And then they can share that with you, and then you can.
All the experience works together to the people that bring their issues and to the group. I can relate to, like, oh, I'm glad that they dealt with it that way, or I can do it this way in the future.
For sure. And also bringing awareness to secular therapists and to therapists across the states. And because a lot of people just haven't heard of the concept of religious trauma and therefore can't pinpoint and treat it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something to check out if you're interested in that. Some of the usual announcements here. Atheist Vanguard is going to be going live at 3 p.m., so be sure to stick around and check that out. As always, we are a nonprofit organization, and we rely on you guys to keep the lights on. So if you guys like what you see, have liked what you've seen, and would like to see more, consider donating to us through patreon.com/Talk Heathen to me. And that is also going to be in the lower third right there. And conversations are happening about these topics and others in Discord throughout the show and afterwards. So if you're interested in talking about a call or bouncing an idea around before you call into the show, which you should do, then feel free to hop into the Discord, and that link should also be in the lower third. And then finally, we've got some lines open, especially if you're a theist and you've been afraid to call in because Eric's scary.
I am kind of scary.
We've still got a scary Eric on here, but not the same one.
No.
So if you want to pummel me with all of your facts, feel free to call in at 512-686-0279. That's 512-686-0279. All right, and with that, I think we are going to hop into some calls. Is there anyone that you think you'd like to talk to first?
Mike.
Let's go with Mike.
Mike.
All right.
He's in Germany.
Mike in Germany, you're on the air with V and Eric.
Hi. Oh, man, I'm happy to be first now. A long-time listener, but first-time caller. And, I have problem. I needed some advice.
For sure. What's going on?
So I'm an atheist. So I was raised Christian. But like many Christians in Germany, even the people who identify as Christian do not really believe it is more like a cultural thing,
Right.
And I cannot pinpoint the moment where I became an atheist. It was more like an outgrowing thing, It's like I always say, as a child, I believed in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and God. And now I don't believe in any of them. Okay, but now I have a girlfriend who is a Muslim. And there was sometimes the issue that she has a genuine fear of God, a genuine fear of divine punishment. And to be honest, I've never met anyone who is really afraid of something like that. So I don't really know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah, that's rough. Because that is a very genuine fear. Like, I remember that feeling, and it's real.
Yeah, for Christians, a lot of what we heard in the Recovering from Religion support groups was a fear of hell.
Yeah.
And it still stuck with them for years and years, and it's what kept them a part of the Christian religion and kept them in the community.
Yeah. My first thought would be to, I guess I have a question for you. Does she talk to you about this? Is this something that you guys have brought up, or is this just you kind of observing this from a distance?
We talk about a lot about religion. I'm not trying to deconvert her, and she's not trying to convert me, but we are exchanging arguments back and forth. And,
okay.
So she's.
Does she claim that her God is a loving God?
No, not really.
Okay.
Because I already tried telling her. I mean, what kind of God would it be who punishes his or her followers for small things? I mean, it would be a petty, vindictive God, right? But it doesn't work because she doesn't necessarily believe that Allah is a good God.
Yeah, not necessarily like petty, but also abusive.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It is. It is a form of abuse. And
absolutely.
It's strange because it's perpetuated without any one person kind of pulling the strings. It's just a mindset that people inflict on themselves. So I think you're doing a really good thing, which is talking with her about this and being open and exchanging your ideas. And the fact that she's sharing these fears with you means that she trusts you a lot, which is good.
Yeah.
And that's something that you should definitely attempt to uphold as much as you can. At this point, I would say listen to her when she's expressing these fears. And ask honest questions. Ask questions not to dissuade her or not to deconvert her necessarily, but to get her to verbalize exactly what she's afraid of. Because a lot of the time, once we verbalize things and make those logical connections out loud, it can actually alleviate some of that fear.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot in the support groups, and in fact, coming soon in Germany, we hope to have some support groups in Germany itself. But what we've seen is once folks start to talk about through their fears, through their doubts, and they hear themselves talk. Instead of it just bouncing around inside of their head, it suddenly like either becomes like, oh, that makes sense, or oh, this is nuts. This is fucking crazy. What I'm thinking.
Right. There are leaps in logic that we are trained to make when we grow up in a religion that are not able to be pinpointed until we're asked to explain how we got from point A to point B.
Especially because we were given these so-called quote-unquote bits of logic when we couldn't even understand logic.
Right.
When we were children and didn't have that part of our brain even fully developed.
Exactly. Another thing you could try maybe is, I don't know where you are necessarily in your community, but if there are any kind of ex-Muslim support groups, not even necessarily atheist support groups, because I know that can feel maybe a little bit alienating, at least at first. If there are other people who were Muslim and who were dealing with these things that she could interact with and just also bounce those off of them, because it kind of helps to have a cultural similarity when you're talking about this as well.
Yeah, on the recoveringfromreligion.org website, there is a tab on the upper part of it that has resources. And in fact, I was just looking through this the other day to speak with a gentleman, and there is a whole section on ex-Muslim resources that you might even be able to hop into and ask some of those questions. I think much better than my background would be able to provide.
Right. I think we're a little bit hamstrung here just because we ourselves have not experienced the Muslim faith, and so we can't speak to exactly the arguments that she might be bringing to you or exactly the fear. But I think that would be my best understanding.
Yeah. I was more afraid of death and less afraid of hell.
Does that help at all?
Yeah, I think that helps. Over time. And there's some signs. I mean, the reason why I'm calling just now was because there was a situation yesterday where she had fear that some other person, some other Muslim, might pray to Allah to break up our relationship.
Wow.
And
Yeah, that was a real visceral fear for her.
Yes. Yeah, she was really nervous. So that was we were in the street and got into a conversation with some Muslims who were proselytizing and handing out Qurans in the street. And this is something that I noticed. Me walking around with her for some Muslims it's like a magnet. They see. Woman who's a Muslim and then me, German, and they ask, "Are you Muslim?" And then I say, "No, I'm an atheist." And then you already see that in their eyes that they are, oh my God, he's going to deconvert her.
Yep.
And so in one situation, it went even so far that the Muslim told me that, you have to go to this mosque right now. You have to convert. This is not okay with you two here. And something like that happened yesterday. I got into a debate. It got a little bit heated, which I think I'm partly to blame for that. But I think I could have also gotten a lot more angry, considering that the Muslim called me a schizophrenic and other stuff. So, but anyhow, after that talk, she suddenly started to think, what happens if this man now starts praying to break up the relationship? And she started shivering, and really it was wow. Never seen it like that.
Well, I think that you're doing the right thing for right now, because you're showing her that you care, that you're caring without doing it for a reward. You're caring it simply for her because you love her, and so doing this is something that I think is incredibly valuable for her. And in addition to that, just think about how you came to become an atheist. It wasn't something that happened overnight either. If I remember that right, is that what he?
Is outgrowing it.
But Eric, for me it was. I was never really a believer.
Got it. Yeah.
I never had the fear of God, never fear of hell. This concept is just so alien to me. You understand?
Coming out of I know that you're not trying to deconvert her, but coming out of a religion is something that takes a process, and you have to be shown different ways of being that you are doing right now to the best of your ability. And honestly, I applaud you for showing how much you love her and being there for her, even though she's frightened. And you are probably one of the best persons for her to be around when she goes through those things.
Exactly. The more that you are there for her, the more you're going to be showing her that there is the possibility of being a good person, being a kind, caring person outside of that religion. And that's going to leave that door open for her. And I think I just end by saying that you clearly care a lot, and that's really, really good and really important, but you also can't take on the responsibility of her fear. If she is afraid, you can be there for her, you can listen to her, and you can try and mitigate that however you can, but it is going to be her journey to either get out of or not. So yes, you are doing all of the right things as far as I can tell, and just calling into the show proves how much you're thinking about this and trying to put your best foot forward. But make sure that you are taking care of yourself too, and not tying yourself to her emotional state in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for calling.
Thanks, guys. That's really helpful. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Oof,
That's a tough situation.
it is very tough because if you haven't grown up in a religion where you were really honestly convinced of something, you're not going to be able to fully grasp somebody who is living in terror of a non-existent entity.
And it totally comes across how much Mike really cares for his girlfriend, and it's moving. It's really moving to me. So
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Rob in Louisiana. Hello, Rob. You're
Hello?
on the air. How are you?
Yay. Doing great. How are y'all?
Doing okay. What's your question for us today?
Okay. Big fan of the show. And I have what I believe to be an irrefutable explanation for the existence of God.
It says you're an atheist here.
That's right.
You're an atheist who has irrefutable proof of God?
That is true.
is this a long proof or pretty darn short?
All right. Well,
No, it's pretty. The first point is pretty doggone short, and that's the irrefutable claim. And then I have a few other points that I wanted to discuss and ask you guys about.
all right. Well, let's get to this irrefutable claim. What is this?
Yeah, without further ado, I'm fairly confident that the explanation won't be new, but I've yet to hear it in this sense. So in my irrefutable explanation, there's two main pretexts, and one is that humans, are inherently wanting to be all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present. And I think that's where the theist image of God came from us, from that impulse that I think all of us basically have to one degree or another. And while that was, I've heard it said it was our first and worst explanation regarding the origins of ourselves and our universe. We didn't have the technologies back then, and regarding the nature of the physical world and stuff. But I do think that this approach might prove to be effective in a way of reaching people, kind of giving them a chance to update their definition of God while not putting it to them that they have to abandon their moral beliefs or their values of being a human. I think it kind of removes the toxic morality that comes along with theism. But
So are you suggesting that because we created God in our own image, that therefore we are the gods? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting that God is an invention of man, but even further.
So the irrefutable evidence of God is that we created him.
Well, in a sense, that's the simplicity of it. That is, it's a semantical thing, but there's a few very...
You've convinced me.
Very semantical. My concern with this, because I think you said you had two pretexts. We get both of them, or are we still on the first one?
Yes, that
God humans want to...
God being
right.
all present, all potent, and all encompassing. As I think we can kind of see with the way the technologies have developed, they've given us the ability to know everything, to be everywhere, to be all powerful. That seems to be the gist of where we've been coming from in our technological advances.
Well, I would amend this slightly. I see where you're coming from. The concept of the all-knowing, all-present, all-powerful God was kind of inspired by Greek philosophers, and when Christianity merged with Greco-Roman culture, they kind of spawned this version of God. So I would amend that to say, not all humans, because up until this concept, that wasn't necessarily any version of God. So I wouldn't say that this is a trait common to all of humanity. I feel like that's overreaching a little bit. And we just want to make sure that this argument is as tight and reasonable as possible. Does that make sense?
It is. And yep, I think that our understanding of our inventions has an evolutionary process. So while we might not have had, while we were, stomping around in caves and stuff, we might not have had the philosophy and theology of it all, etched into the stone. But we definitely did have that huge superstition that was dictating all of our fears and our emotions that eventually wound up leading us to this explanation. And I think that at this point, I think we should be like leading ourselves out of that explanation in a natural way. So in essence, this explanation is seeking not to exclude anyone unless those who are purposefully wanting to be excluded. I think you'll like this analogy. If you're on the highway and someone's lost, you don't come over to them and start yelling at them about being lost. Mm-hmm. You give them kind directions on how to get back on the road and find their way. So if that is at least a suitable analogy.
Okay, so you're saying. Let me just see if I can summarize this.
Let me say one more thing to that point, if I can.
All right, go for it.
Okay. I think it gives people a chance to update their definition of what God is, because I think one of the hardest things for theists, at least like fence-straddling theists, are those who are put to a certain point where at the moment they're put to the point, they don't have the facilities to articulate how they feel, so they will side with the thing that's the safest. So in a human way, I think it's an explanation that doesn't necessarily exclude anyone. It just puts the question to each individual person that we all, on some level, have these traits that were the inspiration for us manifesting this fairy tale. But I think forcing people to abandon that, I think.
So my concern here is, well, first, I agree with you on many of your statements. Like, yeah, don't start yelling at somebody that they're wrong. That's not going to help most of the time. You got to interact and have a dialogue and hear where they're coming from. And also, yeah, I agree that most of what we've talked about in terms of God comes from our own consciousness and what we are and what we expect a holy, higher-than-thou figure to be. My question, though, is why I don't see how this would work any better than any other argument for the non-existence of God necessarily. I understand it's a nice, gentle way to ease people in, but redefining God to mean something else, it doesn't necessarily work. Because no Christian's going to be like, oh yeah, that's clearly the definition of God. You've changed my mind.
Not true. It's worked. It's worked for me. Yes, it's allowed Christians a moment to be silent and to think about it. And typically where they go in their heads is the same place everyone that walks this earth has that ability to reason themselves out of, irrational beliefs.
I'm just curious how you know what's going on in all of these theists' heads. That seems like
I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying like it's been effective. Not
okay. So in your experience, you've used this argument and it's been effective with theists that you've talked to?
I was born in Alabama to a secular theist microbiology, and every day of the week I had these Baptists, Methodists, whatever, banging on my door trying to save me.
So you never been a Christian then? You were never a theist?
I've been a non-believer in that sense since I can remember. It never jived with me.
All right. I think we may have hit on the little bit of a disconnect that we're having here, because generally what we like to do on this show is to make sure we're not speaking for people whose experience we haven't had necessarily. You might notice on the last call, we were kind of hesitant to give any very concrete suggestions because we were talking about somebody who was Muslim and we don't have that experience. So I think it would be interesting to do a little bit of, I don't know, I feel like I'm hesitant to take your word for what is going on in theist heads when they hear your definition if you have not been a theist and been exposed to this as a theist. Does that make sense?
Purely on my dialogue with theists and listening. Okay. I mean, I went to church with my mom until I was like 12 because she made us, but it was, I asked the priest one day when I was like 7 if hell existed, and he like looked at me really sternly and was like nodding, and I was just shaking my head at him. It was just like nothing ever. So, I get what you're saying about don't like necessarily make preconceived notions, and I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just merely saying that because God is an invention of man, God might be invention. So anything immaterial, the car, the airplane, the internet, all these things come from the impulse to be all-powerful, all-knowing, all-encompassing. And the more we peel back these layers based on our knowledge of what the physical world is, like we now know that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth, so we peeled back that layer. We now know for the past 70 years, genetic biology has been the most funded and most successful form of science. So we know that, the creation thing is this and that and this. So my concern is that you have to come to the table, and you have to come to the table with a reasonable explanation so people who have, no matter how anemic their powers of reason are, can hear what you're saying. It's a lot like when somebody calls in and says, "Oh, I got one for you," like they're trying to stump you. Well, you've peeled back a lot of their layers.
So what I hear you
with this last.
What I hear you saying is that this is another argument we can add to the arsenal or our quiver of arguments with folks. Because obviously, like if the person you're speaking to believes that God created man, then they're not going to believe, or they're not going to agree that we created God. So this is it's a situation-specific argument that could be used, but may not always work.
Right. The problem I think I'm having is when you're entering into a critical dialogue with somebody, a critical discussion, the rules of engagement generally are that you have to use internal proofs as opposed to external ones. And the internal proofs have to be things that you both agree on internally within the conversation. In the same way that that would exclude people being able to say, well, the Bible says so, therefore this is my argument. That's an external proof. That's something that they're bringing in that we haven't agreed to, right? And that's not fair. That's not necessarily legal, quote unquote, in a persuasive dialogue. And in the same way,
to the contrary, I think it's actually elevating the dialogue. But that's fine. We disagree, and no big deal.
Well,
I think that's elevating.
This is not opinion necessarily, but
Yeah,
this is kind of agreed upon by argumentative philosophy. But
the beginning of all debates.
Right. This is
like
informal logic 101 kind of stuff. But yes, you can include stuff and then have both parties agree on it, and then it becomes internal proof, and then you can use it. So if you want to bring this into the conversation and say, hey, here is a theory, here's what I'm thinking, do we agree on this? Then if you both do, you can continue that discussion in a productive way. But my concern is that while I agree with what you're saying, that we created gods and that we are continuing to express our need to learn more and do more and know more by, inventing new technology and stuff, I don't necessarily think that's going to be an external proof that is then easily incorporated into a persuasive dialogue with a believer. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. Like the point was meant to be like a very quick and obvious point. I didn't know it was going to digress into what the main point is that with theology, there's too much too much chance for moral toxicity. And I think this is a secular argument that I have not heard, which still says God does exist. What is God? God is invention. What is invention? It's the impulse to know everything, be everywhere, and be all-powerful. That is what God is.
Well,
God
yeah,
is
but we can
impulse
also
from
define
us.
God to mean this coffee mug, right? What is God? God has a handle and is filled with water right now, right? Like, we can define God to mean whatever. My question then is, why do we need to define God into existence at all? Why can't we just dismiss the idea altogether?
I think we're confusing what our definitions of God are.
Well,
What I'm saying is, if you tell somebody that believes in God that God doesn't exist, you're going to have an argument. But if you lead someone through logic to say, hey, this is from us, you can point all the obvious facts. This is what has worked for me to theological people that has stumped them, which has allowed them to be quiet, which has allowed them to reflect. And without being argumentative, because I've been around theological people my whole life, I myself had a girlfriend who was of the Islamic faith, and I found it just curious to sit there and listen to her beliefs. And if something didn't jive, I would say, hey, what about this? And then we'd get into a dialogue. And then
hey, Socratic method, I'm all for it.
There's I think in the days of Hitchens, it was exciting because atheists were like, yeah, get him, and now it's like.
So your issue is less with the
that's not how it's
specific
gonna work.
argument and more with the approach to how we're talking to theists.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I agree. I think that Christopher Hitchens, I think it's 8th anniversary of his death today, actually.
I love him, but he's
a
pit bull.
There are times for pit bulls, right? And there are times for that approach, and there are times for a more compassionate and interactive method of discussing the truth. I think we're in agreement there. Rob, it's been a couple minutes, so I'm going to let you go. But please, if you want to talk more about this, feel free to call back next week, okay?
In signing off, I haven't noticed you guys seeking the enjoyment of beating up verbally people who or disagree with you, and I appreciate that because I believe that is going to help elevate the discourse to a better place.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate that.
Don't mind. I enjoy that.
Yeah, for sure. I love these kinds of conversations.
And I also love beating people up verbally.
Yeah. Again, everything has its place. To everything a season.
Some people are glutton for punishment.
Yep. Okay.
Well, thank you very much,
Rob. Thank you, Rob.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
What do you think about talking to Richard?
Richard, let's run. Yeah, fuck yeah, let's do Richard. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Richard from the USA. What can we do for you today?
How you guys doing today?
I'm doing
good.
so good.
Yeah, you enjoying
If I
yourself?
was doing any better, it'd be criminal probably.
Okay, awesome. How are you, Richard?
Good so far.
Okay, what can we help you with?
Well, I actually got a couple different things.
Okay, well, let's start with your most important, most pressing.
Okay,
and go from there.
I'm an atheist now, and but one of the problems I'm having is with prayer. I just can't seem to give prayer up. Like if something goes wrong in my life or something like that, and it seems like I need to say a prayer. I don't think I'm praying to God, but it just seems like it's logical just to say a little prayer. I don't know if you know where I'm coming from.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That was probably the last habit that I had to break because it becomes a habitual thing. It becomes something you just do, especially when somebody I loved was traveling. Because for some reason I had gotten into my head when I was a Christian kid growing up that if I didn't pray for them and something happened to them while they were on the road or in the air, it would be my fault because I hadn't prayed.
That's a scary responsibility. That
I had anxiety a lot when I was a kid. Like mom going to the food store, okay, I have to go in my room and pray for like 15 minutes to make sure she comes back. So yeah, I totally get that. And for a very long time, I still felt guilty if I wasn't praying for somebody who was traveling, even though I no longer believed in any of it. Did you have similar experiences with that?
I didn't.
Well, actually, oops, sorry about that.
It's all right, Richard. I don't see a problem with you praying. Like what V was saying, it's it's a habit. And even if you never break the habit, it's still something that makes you feel better about approaching the day or the situation you're going through. And some folks find praying to just help focus the mind. But expecting it to actually have a physical impact on something that is unrealistic to think.
Right, exactly. Yeah, prayer by itself, the word is iffy just because it has religious connotation, but meditation or even just being intentional and speaking things into like actually like putting them out there and saying this is something I want or this is something I need or what I'm hoping for. As long as you don't think that it's impacting magically your surroundings, then you're fine, I think.
And even if you want to start shifting your language over from I need to pray or let me quickly meditate on this, it may help you come to grips with it a little bit better and feel okay about continuing to meditate.
Do you think prayer would be like talking to your brain, like relieving the pressure that you're going through?
Well, we had kind of earlier in the show here, we talked about how people, when they hear things out loud, when they hear themselves say things out loud, it either makes no sense or it helps focus them or it helps understand what they're thinking more clearly. And so saying things out loud for people is a very effective way to get that clarity and to understand what's going on in their head. So it's totally okay. I think more internally, but my wife, when she's walking around, she talks to herself, and it's totally. I make fun of her, of course, but it's totally her way to do it, and it's just fine. It's just fine. So yeah, talk to yourself. Talk to yourself in the mirror. Hey man, I'm looking pretty good today, or just like
hell yeah.
But yeah, don't worry about this as being a bad thing. Just think of it as either shifting your language towards meditation, perhaps, or if you no longer want to do this, then just see it as a habit that you'll wean yourself off, like smoking or something.
Yeah. I think that one thing that we tend to grant religions that we shouldn't is that they came up with these ideas and they have like the patent on these things. They don't. They came up with...
They hold the patent over at the papal residency.
Right, the Vatican. It's just like patents for prayer and worship and all that good stuff. This is something that humans do, and it helps. And we figured out that it helped. And in our limited understanding, we were like, oh, it must help because there's a God who's making it work. And that's the most common understanding, at least in the U.S. But yeah,
it's not God that's making it work. It's making you. You're making it to work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're the one that's working on that bill or trying to quit smoking, like you said. You're the one that's fighting the battle, not.
Yeah.
Right.
Not
If you
God.
want to say a excuse me, a thank you prayer, say, hey, thanks me for doing this for me today, or for thinking ahead and getting that shit done earlier in the week.
Exactly. You might even want to throw a few cuss words in there to kind of like push it even further away from.
Say, fuck yeah!
I always curse when I pray.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, does that help?
Yes, it has. It really has helped. My other thing was when I decided that or felt like there was no God. On my heart personally, it felt like something was lifted, like something was going away from my heart. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dissolved. I don't know what that was, or I don't even know.
Oh yeah. No, I have felt that.
It's totally normal too.
Also, you can totally tell that Richard actually was a Christian because he said, on my heart. Nobody except for evangelical Christians say that. So you've proven your credibility here. But yeah, it's I had a very, very strange, I don't want to call it deconversion because I called myself a Christian for another year after that, but it was probably the closest thing to a quote unquote like spiritual experience, like people, and it's very weird, the bodily and mental reactions that happen when something ends that you've been tied to your whole life. And when you get that shift in perspective, it can instigate all kinds of crazy things.
I also think that perhaps what you felt was a resolution of some cognitive dissonance that had been going on for a long, long time. Some doubts that you've been having that have been creeping up and building up and building up. And then when you finally understood, or even maybe when you gave yourself a label and you became it, it was just a relief. Like, yeah, I get it now. I understand. This is who I am.
Yeah, there's a lot of baggage that comes with religion. The idea that you were born broken, the idea that you have sins that you need to be forgiven for, the idea that the threat of hell is always there. There's a lot of background noise that you forget about when you're living in it.
Always in your head and looking at your thoughts.
Right. It's a lot of stuff, and being able to let that go, even if you're not consciously picking all of them apart, that moment where you're like, oh, this isn't real, I can stop worrying about this. That's definitely something that would feel like a lightness, like something lifted.
Yeah. And if you want to kind of read a little bit more about this and explore a little bit more about it, the author Chris Johnson wrote a book called A Better Life, and he interviewed and spoke with about 100 different atheists, and they all shared their experience about what it was like.
I'm going to write that down. You said Chris Johnson?
Chris Johnson, yeah, and the book's called A Better Life. It's a coffee table book. Okay. It's beautifully done, and he's taken great pictures of the folks who wrote about their experiences and how they feel better no longer being an atheist. And also, Greta Christina wrote a book about that too, right?
Yes, and I'm going to pull this up.
You said it was called Living Better Life?
A Better Life.
A Better Life. Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's great.
Oh, you're good.
I got my mouth full of marbles, and
I love book recommendations. This is great. And then also YouTube, some YouTube creators. Rebecca Fox and Anthony Magnabosco just released a beautiful video called "How We Let Go." That talks a lot about. Okay. It talks a lot about the same feelings that you feel. A lot of people sharing their experiences. And some really interesting statistics about atheism in the U.S. So if you want to feel like you're maybe not so alone in this and want to kind of get a feel that other people are feeling the same things, that's also something you want to look up.
But yeah, what you're experiencing is completely normal. But people can experience the exact opposite when they realize
I was like, oh no, my soul's leaving me or something like that.
Luckily, you never had that to begin with.
No, you're good. You're fine.
I know that's a funny comment, but that's what I thought. I said, oh no, my soul's leaving me.
Yeah, some things later. But, if it feels better, then, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
really.
You can kind of fool the devil and pretend to sell it.
Right? I'll sell you my soul that I don't have.
Christians are like, oh, you're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell. I was like, I'd rather go to hell than heaven because heaven sounds boring, actually.
Hey, all the coolest people are going to be in hell. I'll be there. I'll save you a seat.
We'll have one big party. We'll all get
Oh, yeah.
I think all of the cool scientists are there, too, so it probably has air conditioning.
Right, there you go. They fix the heating problem.
They fix the heating there.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in, Richard. I hope this helped a little bit.
Oh, it helped out a lot. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for calling.
Okay, you guys have a great night now.
You too. Bye.
That was cool. And we and in the support groups, we hear that quite a lot, too. People feel great, but then they kind of stumble into something a little bit later where they discover, oh, this is a feeling I have is from religion, too.
Oh, it's not a one-time thing.
No.
It's a continuous process.
Yeah. When I realized I was an atheist, it was literally like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and the foundation I had was gone. And I had to start building a brand new foundation of my worldview because there was no more supernatural. There's no more God, and it was a brand new world. And we see that a lot with folks coming out of cults too, how isolated they have become, or they were in their own community. And then when they break out of it by hook or by crook, there's this whole new world, and you get to see the world fresh, and you get to see discoveries fresh through people's eyes. This one woman who I was so grateful to meet and get to know, she's like, I finally get to have pepper for the first time. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking
What?
about? Pepper? And she was just so excited. I can put pepper on things. I'm like, yes, you can. You can take a spoon and eat
And
pepper
eat
straight
it.
out of the jar.
You'll never want it again if you do that, but
But yeah, just brand new discoveries of everyday life.
Oh, wow.
It's just beautiful. It's so cool to experience those kinds of things.
oh, that's beautiful. Even things that like you don't think of as supernatural.
Yeah.
You realize later after thinking, wait, there's no basis for this anymore. Like it took me a year or two to actually think about the concept of a soul and be like,
Same
oh
here.
wait,
Yeah.
that's a thing too now, isn't it? So it's just a continuous process of looking at what you believe and re-examining with the information you've got.
Yeah, it's for me. It was a constant discovery, new discoveries, and watching other people get new discoveries every day or every meeting. It was fantastic.
Okay. Let's go with Gabriel in Michigan.
Hello,
Gabriel.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear
How are
you.
you?
We're doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Perfect. What can we help you with today?
Well, I wrote a syllogism that basically indicates or proves or whatever you want to say that God is imaginary. It only has 4 lines. I can give them to you.
Okay.
We
And,
probably need to hook you up with Richard.
Yeah, right? Let's
Let's get the two of you connected.
or Rob. Just like let's
Or Rob, yeah, we'll hook you up with Rob, yeah.
let's get you with Rob. All right, but let's hear it. What's your
And
syllogism?
it's not a haiku. It's just a 4 line.
if it's a haiku
Yeah, no
and a
problem.
syllogism at the same time,
That would be
you
amazing.
win.
That would be pretty good. All right, let's give it a shot and see what you guys think. Premise 1, God is imaginary or non-imaginary. That's basically the law of non-contradiction. Agreed?
Yep.
Premise 2, I have to give a definition, but I'll do it afterwards.
Okay.
Future predictive repeatability is the only reasonable method to distinguish the imaginary from the non-imaginary. And when I say future predictive repeatability, I mean testable. It's basically the scientific method. You make a prediction,
Right.
And then you get a result, an expected result. Okay?
All right. Let's see where this goes.
Premise 3, there is no future predictive repeatability for God.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm abbreviating that
Conclusion.
to FPR. Conclusion.
Yeah, well, just instead of future predictive repeatability, you can include in there the scientific method or empirical evidence if you prefer those terms.
Okay.
In conclusion, it is reasonable to believe God is imaginary.
That is one of the things that I often ask, especially when it comes to prayer. How can you be sure that your deity of choice answered your prayer? And obviously, the answer that they always come up with is, how else could it have been done? But we can talk about doing tests, but it's always just like what you said. It's always unpredictable. The answers to these prayers, like you never know if it's going to happen, if it's not going to happen. You can ask for the same thing twice and get it one time and not the other. So
Yes.
Yeah.
and that's really that's really the only access Christians or believers have to God is through the prayer. Is that
Yeah.
Right, exactly. But you'd have to have a repeatable test for that thing. We do that for everything else in our lives. Like, I'm sure you have a microphone in front of you. Do you?
Yes, we do.
Yes. No,
Okay.
I'm just
You see a
next door to you.
microphone, and you have to decide whether that's imaginary or not imaginary. You make a prediction that if I put my hand on it, it'll push back. That's a future predictive thing. It's a test you can do, and that thing is real when you do it. But if suppose in a case where your hand passes through it, if it didn't make it didn't follow your prediction, and it could be a hallucination, it could be an illusion or something like that. So it could be in your brain, it could be part of your imagination, and we do that for pretty much everything in our lives, except for God.
I'm curious because I feel like I would agree with this. I'm curious
Yes?
whether or not a Christian would? Because ideally the goal would be to get them to agree with all three premises and then nail them on the conclusion. But I'm curious how a Christian would interact with premises 2 and 3. Because I feel like there are definitely Christians who think they do have a way to prove that God is non-imaginary.
They also throw up the verse where you can't test God.
Right.
Oh yes, you can tell. Well, that's the thing is, if you can't do a test, it's reasonable to believe it's imaginary. You can't test for leprechauns. You can't test for unicorns. You can't test for an infinity number of imaginary things.
Right. So you could maybe say the imaginary things are unfalsifiable, and since God, and then you're basically saying since God is unfalsifiable, therefore God is imaginary. But
well, no, there's I mean, we can't. How should I put this? Until something has some empirical basis, some repeatable testability, it is reasonable to believe that they are imaginary.
I still think
I'm not saying there is no God. I'm saying until there is some repeatable test, that it is reasonable to believe that it is just in our imagination.
We are talking about reason, yes.
Yeah.
But that's not what believers always tend to work from. And when I do bring up, oftentimes when I'm discussing with believers, I do bring up talking about testing and show me your evidence and show me your proof. They always bring, I don't remember what that verse is. What is that verse where thou shalt not test God or...
Yeah, do not test the Lord thy God.
There, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't know why I was blanking. So, but that always comes up as a scapegoat for getting out of showing evidence or testing God for me.
Something that might be interesting to do, because I like where you're going with this. I'm just concerned about its effectiveness when you're actually engaging with a theist. Something you might want to do is move from a syllogism to a plausible argument. So first, do this, have the same premise, same premises, same conclusion, but use something that isn't God. Use something that everybody can agree with and say, hey...
Russell's teapot?
Right. So Russell's teapot is either imaginary or non-imaginary. The way that we can predict if it's non-imaginary is by applying, X, Y, and Z. And then if we can't apply X, Y, and Z, therefore it is imaginary. Which again, I'm gonna have to do some more thinking on this. I'm not nearly as well versed in philosophy as some of my other host friends, but I think what you can do is get them to commit to those before you bring God into it, and then like that.
Yeah, it's not imaginary. It's right.
It's not imaginary. It's right there.
You could apply this to anything, really.
Right. So a good way to get them to agree to using it as a proof within the context of your argument would be to introduce it talking about something that isn't God, and then swap God in and say what's different about this syllogism now. And then whatever their answer is, then you can jump off and talk about that. I think that would probably be the best way to approach that.
That sounds very reasonable. Much better than what I was saying.
No, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it in a form that people can argue about it or not.
Right. No, and I think you've done that. I think that the form, I'm going to have to, again, look at it again. And Matt's probably going to yell at me at some point and say, it's wrong because of this and this. But for the purposes of this argument, it made a good conversation. And I think that's all that a good syllogism should do in theory. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're on the right track.
For sure. I'd finesse it a little bit, but for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys like it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for calling
Gabriel.
in.
Have a good one.
You too. I'm going to get nailed on that later. Eric or Matt is just going to be like, you messed that up. You missed something. So probably going to issue a retraction next week. But for now, at least it gets you thinking. All right. Do you have somebody you'd like to talk to next?
There's so many good folks here.
Ooh, you want to go with Chris in California?
Okay.
Okay. Let's go with Chris. Hi. You there?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Vi. Hi, Eric. Good to meet you.
You as well.
You as well. How are you doing, and what can we help you with?
I'm surprised you took me so quick. Hey, I was getting my coffee. I'd come back to a note here. Yeah, hi.
Hi.
And there you are 7 seconds ago or something like that.
We're still here.
Yep, we're good to go. So
We
it
are
says
all ears.
It says that you're saying that paranormal experiences might be real.
Yeah. I thought I'd start with a little precursor, just because I called in a few times before. I talked to you via a little bit with Eric, I think it was, or no.
Nope, you didn't talk to me.
No, the Mr. Head Kid Eric.
Mr.
as
Murphy.
I might call him.
Yep.
I'm not a kid.
That curly-haired dude with glasses.
The guy with the good hair. Not that you don't have.
I've got great hair.
You've got a good beard. All right. So.
Nowhere near as gray as mine, but anyway, the
Oh, get out of the way. You guys are going to go at it.
But anyway, you guys provide a great service for people that are Christians that are thinking more, and those who just converted, and you're that too, and that's great. And
thank you.
Whatever, yeah, whatever. But however, I don't want to say. Anyway, I'm agnostic.
Okay.
And it's. Sometimes, yeah, I feel maybe left out, but maybe not that, but sort of as if when I call in to state my perspective, I get arguments about how, well, why do you believe that? And I don't really believe it. I don't really believe hardly anything, or whatever. Yeah, I get into those explanations, but. So that's one thing that maybe we can get into in a little bit. But let me go with the thing. Start with what you were sort of topical here, where you were talking about praying, I believe.
Yeah.
And the gentleman was talking about how he's an atheist and he still prays, and you said, well, that's okay as long as you don't think something magical is happening or something like that, or.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about an overall umbrella statement would be there should be no problem thinking that paranormal experiences might be real or happening.
Okay. So
that's the statement.
That's the statement.
And what do you have to back that up? A story? Or,
well, I'm assuming it stems from your agnosticism, right?
That's an opinion. That's an opinion.
I see.
So
I mean, people.
Well, I mean, that's an extraordinary claim.
Might be real.
That's an extraordinary claim, right? To say that the paranormal is real.
I mean, there's many paranormal things like deja vu, supposedly.
Wait,
and
deja vu is paranormal?
How else is it happening? I don't know. A feeling that you're
hiccup in the brain.
Well,
if
maybe
your brain processes
whatever might be happening. I mean, maybe it's the word paranormal that throws people off. I don't know.
All right, let's start with that.
But just considering that something like that might be happening.
Okay, Chris, what's your definition of paranormal, and then we can go from there. Because if we're using this word and you're like, well, maybe it means this or something else.
Paranormal is something that might be happening on what you might call the spiritual realm, or something you can't see actually happening, but we think it's happening. And so, for instance, a prayer and something being answered, your prayer being answered by a higher power. That's paranormal.
So my concern with that definition is that if we can't see that it's happening and can't measure it and predict it, then we can't know if it exists at all. And if we can see and measure and predict it, then it stops being paranormal and just becomes part of what we understand to be part of nature, right?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a problem to me. I mean, that's a good description.
Okay, so the paranormal is natural stuff that we haven't figured out yet? I can get behind that. I don't know why we call it the paranormal.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. But more than likely, actually. Now thinking it through here, that would make sense because it may be happening on an invisible realm, and all these things could be true. Everything they talk about in all these crazy religions.
Well, not all of them could be true, because that would violate the law of non-contradiction several million times.
You would exclude some of them? just for which ones and why?
Well,
we'd have to determine which ones directly contradicted each other, and then determine which one was correct. Because
well, I would guess there's tenets in all of them that are similar, and yeah, some stuff that's whack, and who knows.
So how would you determine between the stuff that is actually happening on an invisible plane and which stuff is whack?
If you don't have any way to prove it, then you don't. There's no way to prove it. If man devises a way to measure the spirituality of things, and maybe some actual communication to a God is happening via prayer, and I measured that communication. I saw it. We recorded it. Here it is. It went through this media, whatever. Did something like that. Then maybe you could prove it. But I don't think we're doing that now. Unless the deep state is
we
involved
certainly
in
aren't,
like
at least not on any scale that I'm aware of. I would all these calls are kind of blending into each other, because now I want to jump back to Gabriel and say, well, God's either imaginary or not imaginary.
Of course.
Yeah.
What's the next subject here? We beat that one to death here.
I feel like my concern here, though, is you keep premising this idea of a spiritual realm or an invisible realm as a reason to believe in the paranormal, as though we've proven the invisible realm. But you can't use something that isn't proven to prove something that also isn't proven.
Well, let's get one thing straight right away, B. I'm not trying to prove anything.
Okay.
It almost sounds like you're kind of going down a logical, well, I wouldn't say logical, a rabbit hole in a sense, where I could say there's a dragon on your back, and you could say, well, I can't see it. Well, then it's invisible. Well, I don't feel it. Well, it's weightless. Okay, well, it breathes fire that doesn't have any temperature or something. You keep kind of moving the goalposts into an area where it just becomes ridiculous and not even testable. And when we don't have testable hypotheses, I mean, it's kind of cool to think about them, but we live in a reality in which we work to test and discover things. And if we can't test it, then why would we think it's even real?
Right. I think we all agree.
I don't think I stated, I'm sorry, excuse me, but I don't think I stated anything is real. I mean,
well, you said it might be. So you're being
it might be. Yeah, who knows? Anything might be real.
Okay, so are you
hell with the real burning and people in their horrid clothing might be real.
Are you a hard solipsist?
What's that?
Are you a hard solipsist, or is your agnosticism to the point that you don't believe that you can verify whether or not you're a brain in a vat, basically?
I cannot verify that. I'm sorry, I just didn't understand all that word.
I'm curious to know how far you're taking this agnosticism, because I'm assuming that all of this conversation is based on the idea that we can't know anything for sure, and so the supernatural might be real, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to know if we can agree on a baseline reality, or if you're just going to keep bouncing it back to, well, maybe reality isn't real.
Based on reality, I believe, and I absolutely believe in physical reality. I've experienced it all my life, and it's real. Okay, good.
And, so we believe in reality.
And I believe a lot of the history, the well-documented stuff that makes sense, definitely. Anyway, yeah.
Perfect. That's good. Good baseline. I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, so, no problem. Mm-hmm.
So I'm also an agnostic. I know that there are things I don't know, and then I know there are things I don't know that I don't know, right? Like the slice of everything that we know is infinitesimal in comparison with everything that we don't know yet. My only thing, though, is that the reason we have to call out belief in the paranormal or belief in gods is because up until this point, the best way that we've discovered to move through the world in an effective way that keeps people safe and happy and thriving is through using the ability to reason and the ability to use the scientific method and to test and hypothesize and prove and disprove ideas, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So the reason that we talk about, well, that's not testable, that's not provable, therefore you shouldn't believe it, is from that practical standpoint of if you believe that your prayer is really going to help somebody who is homeless, right? Then you're not going to actually go out there and help the homeless person, and the homeless person is still going to suffer, right? So believing in the supernatural to the extent that it affects how you're interacting with the world and impacting the way you're affecting that world, that's where we have a problem. I'd be happy to sit around all day and hypothesize about what could or could not be out there in the world that we don't know yet. And I'm well aware that we don't know a lot. So I think we're on the same page there, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I certainly wouldn't take it as a reason to sit back and say, it doesn't matter or whatever or something like that.
And the same would go true with
and
psychics.
even though your, for instance, was filled with a little bit of assumption, that's fine. I mean, yeah, maybe they sit there and talk about it, and they do go out and take care of the homeless directly, but who knows? But anyway, yeah, I understand your point,
right?
And that makes sense.
And it doesn't just apply to prayer;
right,
it also
exactly.
applies to psychics and quote. I'm doing air quotes for the audio folks. Quote unquote mediums, where they claim to get in touch with dead relatives, and they bilk you for those dollars, and that's for people who.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There's bad stuff involved in that. Obviously, yeah.
Yeah. So teaching people how,
and there's reason to be aware of that, and because of your audience bringing that kind of stuff up makes sense.
Yeah.
And as you might say, I'm a humanist too. I mean, I care about the people, and I really want everybody to be helped.
Chris,
for us to be better. Anyway, yes, sir. Eric, what do you got?
All of that falls under the paranormal. And so what we're saying is it's dangerous to think that there is a paranormal out there when you don't use your critical thinking skills, when they're not testable.
When you don't use your what?
Your critical thinking skills. And when it's not testable, it's dangerous to think that there's paranormal in some cases. In most, I'd say even most cases.
I think in general, you don't believe
what you're
in
saying
things.
Doesn't apply to me.
Well, okay, so why are you calling?
Yeah.
Not that this wasn't a fun conversation, but I think we agree that we don't know everything and that we shouldn't be encouraging people to pursue paranormal or spiritual options when actual testable options are available, right?
Maybe, yeah. Well, whatever. You're the one that knows what your deal is and who you serve most and how you can serve them best. I'm bringing up another viewpoint. It's my viewpoint. I don't feel danger in considering that paranormal things might be happening, being something that's going to carry me away off into who knows what land and be all screwed up in the mind or something. I'm not sure if I'm paraphrasing what you're saying and translating it right into regular English, but.
And I also understand that you don't feel that way, but when I was a kid, I read this series of books that were based on, written by a Christian author. It scared the fuck out of me because it talked about this invisible world that was going on around me, and it involved angels and it involved demons.
Is this Frank Peretti?
Oh my God, that guy's... Yes, it did involve Frank Peretti. And it, like I said earlier, it scared the fuck out of me, and that was all paranormal stuff. So I understand that you may not...
But Christian-based again.
Hold on, Chris. Yeah, I understand that you may not feel that it is affecting you in a dangerous way or anything like that, but it does have strong repercussions for folks who think that the paranormal is real. So I would caution you... to extend your beliefs onto others, because like what V was trying to do at the beginning, come to a agreeable definition, a definition the two of you can agree on. And everything that we had talked about, prayer, angels and demons, and psychics and mediums, those are all considered under paranormal and within the definition that we had agreed on at the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I say we agree on 90%. I think that probably if you're using your belief in, I just don't understand why you would hold out belief in or the possibility of belief in something that has not been proven or tested or given any evidence for. If you want to call back with evidence of the paranormal, and we can then discuss that for sure. But I think we're going to move on if there's nothing else.
Yeah, briefly, just kind of round it up here. I've had experiences, discussing them. I don't know if that's worth it at times, but this is great. I'm happy to explore a little more and talk about this same subject.
Yeah.
And I think we had interacted on it before when whoever was your host at that time. But great. I appreciate the time, and good to talk to you. Nice to meet you, Eric. And
thanks, Chris.
We'll maybe bump heads a little more another time.
Sounds like fun. Thanks for calling.
Call back and talk to the much handsomer Eric.
No. Oh, my goodness.
So you read those Peretti books, too?
I read those. I read the Cooper Kids adventures.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, lots of weird, like, sacrificing his daughter to dragons type situation. It's great. Yeah, honestly, like, if you call in and you want to argue a point and there is a personal element, like you have had an experience, let's lead with that, because that's interesting. That's what's going to get us compelled to have these arguments. Otherwise, we're just kind of agreeing with each other using different words. And
we can have this discussion at a bar or something like that.
Oh, like, for sure. Philosophically, I love talking about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But on a practical day-to-day level, especially when you're talking about and with people who grew up with magical thinking, that it's not helpful. Mm-hmm. So... all right, we've got 3 more people to talk to, but first I want to refresh this Patreon page and read out our top 4 patrons this week. We have got Charlotte Crum, Desert Heathen, Bethany P., and a new patron, Cully. Thank you guys so much for donating, for helping us keep this show going, help us keep the lights on. You're the reason we get to do this. Okay, so... 3 more calls. Who would you like to take?
I believe there is a post-show Q&A as well.
Yes. There is going to be a little bit of a post-show Q&A on Discord that our lovely people in the back are going to set up for us. So if you want to continue conversating with us, or if conversating, I think that's the first time I've ever used that word. It is a word, but it's not one that, I don't know. If you want to continue talking with us.
It was on the word of the day calendar. Yeah, that's why I decided to use it. At the audience.
My gosh. Then, log into the Discord, and we can answer some questions there, too.
Oh, and the address for the Discord is up on the screen.
Look at him. He's got this. Down here. Yeah. Okay. Let's go with Matthew.
Yeah, let's get this
because this is all coming together. Matthew in Michigan, how are you doing?
Hello, can you hear me fine?
Oh,
yes.
Man, we can hear really good.
Can you hear any background noise right now?
Nope. You sound like you're in a noise-canceling room,
like
so we like it.
Closet?
Okay, good, because I just moved into my own place, and my dad's currently doing construction inside the house, and was just making sure you couldn't hear it.
No, you're good. All right.
Anyways,
what can we help you with?
I've called in to ask, how would a person go about getting over their fear of paranormal or supernatural things?
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in a pretty religious area. A lot of people believe in that kind of stuff. I never really believed it, but it still gets to me.
Mm-hmm.
What specifically gets to you?
Yeah.
Like the thoughts of like demons or ghosts,
Got it.
spirits, and all that.
Yeah. No, I could totally relate. That scared. Like I mentioned earlier, scared the piss out of me.
Oh yeah.
I thought they were real.
I've had quote unquote experiences. I don't believe that they were real, but I've had sleep paralysis many times.
Same here.
And it's terrifying.
Something that's very, very common.
When you just can't move and you're just stuck in your bed there and you see like things leaning over you, touching you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a terrifying thing to go through, and it makes a lot of sense to think about how people are like, oh, I don't know what this is. My only experience has been that there has been someone else in the room with me, so that must be what's happening now. even though we've been able to debunk that particular claim.
Yeah, especially if you don't know what sleep paralysis is,
Yeah.
and then to go through it and experience something like Matthew or even myself. Have you had sleep paralysis before?
I have not.
Okay, I have.
I'm waiting for that to happen so that I can join the club. But up until this point, I've been spared.
Yeah, it is a freaky experience, and is easily can be seen as a supernatural event unless you know that this is a common occurrence. For me, I woke up as a kid and I saw this angel materializing at the foot of my bed and from the head down, and it was really creepy. Yeah, so how does one go about dealing with this fear? And are you? I assume you're wanting to get rid of it or alleviate it some.
Yeah.
It does give me paranoia sometimes.
Yeah. I would imagine that one thing you could do would be to find people in your area who also are coming out of a religious experience and talk with them.
Now, are you coming out of a religious background yourself?
I was raised in a religious household, but I've never really been religious myself.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, whether or not you personally believed, being around that kind of atmosphere as a kid, as you're absorbing all of this information, still has effects, and you are still damaged by that. Yeah. So I think even if you personally were not a believer, you could still take advantage of, say, the Recovering from Religion Foundation's offerings.
Yeah, and I think that to start off, we can say something like, there is a good chance that it will not be a switch that's flipped in you automatically. More than likely, it's going to be a gradual process of one thing dropped after another until you finally are free of this fear. But definitely sitting down and talking with folks who don't believe in the supernatural and are empathetic towards you, which a lot of the all of the recovering from religion groups, a lot of them. Oh my gosh, that's
a lot of them.
There's like one or two that aren't. No, they're all fantastic. All the RFR groups are trained to do, or even the online chat or the phone call, talking with other people, sitting down with other people, and just like we had mentioned earlier, hearing the stories that you're experiencing. Like if you tell your story out loud and then you suddenly realize, well, that sounds silly, or that doesn't sound nearly as scary as I thought it was, those go pretty darn far into, and having that peer support goes really far to helping come to grips with these fears, and so they no longer haunt you, quote unquote haunt you. That's okay.
Yeah, another thing that really helped me kind of deconstruct a lot of my fear around those things was researching where they came from.
Yeah.
And kind of doing like a historical, even like inquiry into, okay, so the concept of a demon is linked to the concept of a jinn, and the concept of a jinn was created when this thing happened, and they had to explain this, and actually like going through and figuring out where these myths started and the different variations of them and how people came up with them in the first place, especially if there are a lot of them where our current understanding of them is actually very recent. And so we might be afraid of something that hasn't even been around for more than 20 or 30 years. Like the concept of spiritual warfare that Frank Peretti talked about a lot was a relatively recent invention, or at least a resurgence of something that for a very long time people didn't even think about. So I would say maybe do a little bit of research and really look at what scares you. Look at it head on, because I guarantee you it's gonna evaporate.
Yeah, finding out the roots of it, and like exactly what you said, researching it, and possibly even finding out or researching like how could this within the nature and the science that we know, is there any possible way this could happen? Are the energy are we aware of the forces? Are we aware of the particles that could possibly make these things real? And within my own research, we know nothing of that. Nothing even close that would explain the nature of ghosts or the nature of demons or what have you.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So for me, I know that a lot of I was never afraid of ghosts necessarily, but I was always like, maybe it's a thing.
It's kind of fun too.
I grew up in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Well, they've got ghosts all over the place.
Exactly. Worked in one of the most haunted inns in the United States. It was an experience. I was the only one they'd send to clean the attic because I was the only one who'd dare to go up there. But a lot of that, even tentative, maybe possibly, went away when I realized there's no such thing as a soul. So what would stick around?
Oh, that's a great point.
You know?
Yeah,
so like,
that's a great
okay,
point.
so a ghost would be the remnants of a person that was dead, but if you're just your brain and your brain is dead, there's nothing left to inhabit anything.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
goes that.
So, Matthew, where do you stand on that? Where do you
Yeah.
stand on the afterlife? If you're not a believer, but were kind of raised in it, where do you stand on that?
I don't really have an opinion one way or another. I'm not afraid of death. I'm just afraid of how I'm going to die.
Okay, well, that's
fair.
Very fair and realistic.
Yeah.
So, do you have any idea of where a person goes after they die? Because that might help alleviate some of at least the ghosts' fears.
Yeah, or I mean other ones too.
In the supernatural realm.
I think this is what we were trying to get to when we were talking with Chris about the dangers of believing in the paranormal and saying it might be out there, because Chris out here saying, oh, it might be real, and then here's Matthew saying, I'm terrified of this, please tell me it's not real. So I would...
I know that it's not real, but it's just hard for me to get over after being raised in a household for 19 years, being told about all this sort of kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah, that's completely fair and understandable and expected.
Do you have an opportunity to get out of the household and surround yourself on a regular basis with another
I just
community?
moved into my own place yesterday.
Yeah, he just said he moved into his own place.
Oh, that's right. And your dad was doing construction. That's really cool.
That's going to be a huge step right there.
Yeah, it really will be.
So you are these things that are they're coming with you right now, these fears, because they've been given to you by your family. But as you put that distance between them, not emotionally or physically necessarily, but just being on your own and being in a situation where you decide what information comes into you, that's gonna help a lot. So that you're already aware it's not true and it's not real is huge.
Yes.
So you've made that first big step, the biggest one that needs to be taken. And now it's just a matter of reminding yourself of that and practicing things that are going to help you to get over it slowly, because it's not going to be a overnight type thing.
And even avoiding the things that might reaffirm it.
Right. Like if your friends are going out to a scary movie that has ghosts in it, like maybe I'm going to skip out on that one.
Or searching the internet for explanations of why the Gettysburg ghosts are real, and it comes up with crank theories.
Oh yeah.
And stuff like that.
Go on a ghost tour and then meet the people afterwards who were the ghosts. It's a uniquely demystifying experience. Like, oh, you're getting drunk. That's cool. Does that help at all, Matthew?
Lately, yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to call back. And also a good place to go for this kind of thing would be the Discord, I think. I know there are probably tons of people who have similar experiences out there who would also be willing to kind of either help you debunk some of these things in a way that makes it less scary, or just commiserate and be like, yeah, man, that's kind of freaky. I'm scared of that too.
I don't really use media a whole lot.
Yeah, perfect.
I don't have Discord.
Well, we're going to be playing around with it after the show.
And it's a free program too, and to sign up free, and there's no cost to it at all.
Yeah, it's pretty intuitive, and the link should be in our description if you want to check it out.
I will look into it.
Awesome, and feel free to call back. Congrats on your new place.
Thank you, and thank you for taking my call.
For sure.
Very excited and somewhat nervous. Had to hold down puking.
Matthew, so do I. I have to do that too. You're not alone.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for calling in, Matt.
Thank you, and thank you for taking my call. Have a good day, you guys.
You too. Bye.
So Discord, it sounds like it's a community where folks can come to a community and kind of discuss type. So tell me a little about that.
So Discord
I actually haven't joined I've joined Discord, but I haven't actually joined the ACA.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There are different channels for the different shows. So every show that gets put on, people pop over to that channel and talk about the show, or the hosts or, different callers and give their own arguments, stuff like that. And then there are also just general chats and places that you can go on any day and just interact with people who know the shows, who know, have that kind of common community.
Good. Yeah. So it's a place you can just go to your computer, and it's on Windows, and I know I've got it on my Android, and
yeah.
assume it's Mac.
You can just log on. It's a fairly intuitive process. The only thing you have to be comfortable doing is like jumping in, because there are like 5 different conversations that have been going on for a week that are happening like right in front of you. So you just got to get in there. But yeah, it's a good place. Lots of cool people there. All right. 2 more callers. Let's go to Charles in Canada.
Hey, Charles.
Hello, Charles. Oh, you're a little bit muffled. Hello?
I think he's having a conversation with somebody.
Charles, we're popping you back on hold. All right. Sounds like a heated conversation. Okay, let's go to Joe in Washington. Joe, how are you?
Hello?
Hey, Joe.
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. What can we help you with today?
Okay, so I'm a former believer, and a little bit of background. My dad was the preacher, and I grew up kind of questioning everything. And at one point, going through a career change, I was looking at going into seminary and actually becoming a preacher. And that's kind of when everything fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that happens.
Doing all the research and looking at the evidence, and I kind of went, yeah, this is BS.
Yeah.
So recently I came out as a questioning with my wife, because I'm like, well, the atheists are coming up with better arguments than the Christians are. This is actually making more sense. And right. I think once I used the A word, like everything crumbled. So there's been a bit of backlash with my family. And now it's like a battle over the kids, because I've got 4 daughters. My older ones, one of them is still a believer. The other one's like, yeah, I'm just spiritual. Yeah. And then I've got a 13-year-old that, like, she was mad for a while, but once I explained some things to her and why I don't get it anymore, why I don't believe, she's like, yeah, she was mad. And then now she's like, it makes sense. I get it. I get why you're there. Okay. But the fight is over the 5-year-old. We have to protect her. We have to shield her. And now they've pushed to get her into this, overtly Christian school. And I voiced my objections, and I gave them reasons why, and not only just the cost, but like I wasn't listened to. And I'm wondering, how far should I push it? How far should I push the conversations? Because what I'm getting back when I do try to discuss it is, well, I don't have to prove anything, and trying to explain where the burden of proof really is, I get nowhere. I'm frustrated, really. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell.
So you're concerned about your 5-year-old, and it sounds like the argument that they're using that you're an unfit parent is because you're a non-believer?
Right. Okay. And they know better because they believe, and they have to shield her and protect her from me so that she doesn't, so that she's not drawn away into,
right.
Heathen too.
Is this a legal battle or just an interpersonal struggle?
It's all interpersonal.
Okay.
So yeah.
Do you have the resources to take it legal?
Or is that an option that you'd want to pursue?
I don't know that it would actually help. I mean, we're all still in the same house.
I see.
There's been no, yeah.
Okay.
And the struggle is I live with my mother-in-law, so we're all there. Okay. Sharing a house together, and it complicates a lot of things. So I don't know really if I should just keep my mouth shut or, bring up the points where I don't agree. But it just doesn't seem like it's making any difference. Like they've got their mind
Hello? You cut out for a second there.
Hello. Oh, yeah.
I think,
Um,
not to put words in your
yeah,
mouth, but I think
they-
you said they got their minds made up. You might have been saying that they got their minds made up.
yeah, they've got their minds made up, and
Okay.
and like it doesn't really matter like what objections I have. I feel like I'm being ignored basically.
Yeah.
So
Well, ignoring it is one way to make it go away, I guess. Yeah, I feel that. That's hard.
So I don't have kids.
Yeah, me
So
neither.
It's kind of talking out of just from third-hand conversations from the recovering from religion groups, kind of the group that I've been a part of for the last 4 years, talking just from what I've heard from them. And these situations, first and foremost, you're not alone. I don't know if you need to hear that or not, but this is so common with religiously mixed families like you are experiencing right now. You're not alone, and it sucks, and it's bullshit, and this is obviously more evidence the harm of what religion can do.
Yeah. It looks like he got dropped.
Oh.
Maybe his wife came in or something and he had to cut off the phone call. But hopefully he'll be able to watch this back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, knowing that you're not alone, knowing that this is something that a lot of people have been going through. A lot of people have called into Talk Heathen and AXP with similar stories, with similar concerns. Honestly, without knowing the interpersonal dynamics of your family, it's very difficult for me to make a clear suggestion for a course of action. I would say that all you have to do is make sure that you are there for your daughters,
Right.
and that you are being a good person and being a person that they can look up to regardless of what your beliefs are. If at the very least, if your daughter gets put into this religious school, which really shouldn't be able to happen without your consent. If somehow, your daughters do, get raised religious, at the very least, they will be able to point to somebody in their life who they love, who they care about, who they know is a good person, who doesn't share their faith. And that's going to put them miles ahead of many, many other Christians who grew up being told horror stories about atheists and stories about how they can't be moral and how they can't love people. So right away, just your presence in their life and you being there and you being a supportive and good father is going to keep that door open for them to start questioning other things that they're told. Because if they're in church one day and the pastor or a congregation member says atheists are terrible people and they can't love anybody, blah, 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 they're going to think, that's not true. I have objective evidence that isn't true. What else might not be true? And that's honestly the first step towards them coming into their own as people who are skeptical thinkers.
And almost, it seems to me like it would go towards play it safe. You're not going to get any extra reward in the afterlife if you are an out there atheist. If your priority, which it sounds like, is your children, then do what you can. Even I don't have kids, but if I had a 5-year-old and if I was in his situation, I'd freaking go to church to sit next to my 5-year-old. I'd volunteer to do something at the Sunday school or something. I mean, I'd hate it, sure, but at least I'd get to spend time with my 5-year-old. But his in some sense his well-being is affected by living with his mother-in-law and the whole family being in that under that one roof. You're not going to get any extra bonus points at the end of your life for being a good atheist. This is your only life that you've got. Do what you can to make your priorities and focus on them and just love your kids as the best as you can.
Right. Nobody should or will most likely look at your children and say, "Oh, you let them be religious, how dare you?" That's not something you need to worry about. In fact, I have concern for parents who raise their kids to be atheists only and to ridicule other ways of thinking. You have this opportunity to take these kids who would otherwise be raised Christian anyway and give them a different perspective and give them acceptance and the idea that they can ask questions and they can doubt and they can come to you with any questions that they've got and be heard and be listened to and not be shamed for asking them. So you are in a really, I know it sucks, and I can't imagine being put in that position because I'd be furious as hell if my 5-year-old was being taught things that I didn't believe and thought was harmful. But if you take a step back, it is a beneficial position for them. They are going to benefit from you being in their life.
And that's not to say for you to personally bottle up everything that you have to say. You need to find an outlet. You absolutely need to find an outlet, whether it's a secular community or one of the recovering from religion groups, or even calling in the hotline or on the online chat. Talk with someone about this as well. Get this out. Don't let it all bottle up and back up in your head. But find that balance. Get out what you need to get out, but don't get it out on your family, or definitely don't get it out on your kids.
Yeah. I hope that helped. And thank you for calling in. If you want to call back next week, we'd be happy to talk to you some more. Or jump in the Discord. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. Let's see if Charles is back on the line. Charles in Canada, can you hear us?
Hello, Charles.
Charles going once.
Hello, hi.
Hello.
Hey, Charles. It is so good to hear your voice.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. What can we help you with today?
Okay, I'm an atheist.
Cool.
You're breaking up pretty bad.
But the connection is really, really bad, yeah.
Can you try turning the live stream off on whatever device you're watching? Because we're getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, I'm using my Samsung phone. I can see you guys.
Oh, you don't need to see us. You can just listen to us. So if you put it on mute, because we're hearing ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't like hearing me, so just.
Oh, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Yeah.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, you TV is off. So I'm an atheist, like atheist to 100 power. Even my Delarontic become a Christian. I don't think I'll become a Christian. That's how strong I am. But anyway, my father, I came to Canada 20 years ago. My father is a strong Muslim. My mother is a strong Christian. I don't know how they managed to get married for a very long period of time there. But last time I went there, they asked me to pray, and I didn't know how to handle the situation. I just told my father that I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I don't believe in that anymore. And then we're there exchanging, going back and forward, and I was really showing them my mother, like, this is in the Bible, like slavery, or morality. Anyway, we're going back and forward, but I discovered it won't go nowhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah? But I love my mother so much that this time, because she's sick, she's almost in a coma, so I have to go and visit her again. So when they ask me to pray again, I believe the same thing is going to come up next time. So I don't know how to handle it, because last time it was not good.
Yeah. I think... Now I'm gonna paraphrase what I think you're saying. So let me know if I've got this right. You went home, and both your parents are strongly religious, of different faiths, and they asked you to pray, and you said you didn't do that anymore, and so you had a back and forth with them, and it went okay, but you don't know how to continue that conversation.
No, it didn't went okay.
Oh, it didn't go okay. Okay.
It didn't go okay. By this time again, I'm going back again because my mom, the doctor told me my mom is very, very sick. I should come and visit her.
Oh, okay.
So I'm planning to go back again, but I believe that something like that is going to happen again.
Okay.
Because even on the phone here, we always get chats all the time. We have a fight on the phone. It's about God stuff. Mm-hmm. Because they all want to pray for me. They say they want to pay me out of They say I've joined a satanic cult in Canada. That's what they believe there. Mm-hmm. So I think we should improve. People who are atheists, Anthony Hawkins and Christopher H., a lot of people that they know, prominent people. I say, look, these people they don't belong to a cult. Yeah, we don't have no church. We just don't believe that the Christian God exists, or the Muslim God, or Hindu, Buddhist, or whatever. We have to prove it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree that. I think you did a good thing by stating what you were and were not okay with at home last time and saying, I'm not going to pray with you because that's not something I feel like I should do or need to do. But I would almost say that if you know that it's not going to be a good conversation and there's going to be tension and fighting, and if your mom is sick and you're going back to visit her for that reason, I think it's okay if you just play along a little bit and keep the peace, even if it's going to be hard and you're going to probably feel that inside, like you want to argue. But I think that for the purposes of this next conversation, you shouldn't feel like you need to argue with them or that you need to convince them. It's okay to just to bow your head and, go along with it. I've done that at home too. There was recently there was a death in the family. And I went home to help everybody through the grieving process, and they were praying, and I bowed my head, and I didn't add to the prayer. I didn't pray anything myself, but I knew that was what they needed at that time, and because I love them and care about them, I was willing to kind of take that step back. Is that something that you feel like maybe you can do?
Yeah, I can do. Like the thing that I can't do, I don't know, because since I become an atheist, my lifestyle has changed. I used to lie when I was lie a lot, but since I become an atheist, I say, my word is my bond. I put that with myself. Yeah. So I say, even no matter what, except when somebody is facing death, I may lie in order to avoid this person from being killed. Mm-hmm. Yeah? But I said, no matter what, I always stand on the truth. Mm-hmm. For me to go to Cameroon, because they always ask me to lead the prayer.
Yeah.
For me to lead the prayer and then lying to them, I don't know how I can handle that.
I understand that. I think I'm the same way. As soon as I got out of that kind of bad religious upbringing, I was like, I'm not gonna trick myself anymore, and I'm not gonna trick other people. Honesty is the best policy. I understand. It is possible to say, I don't want to talk about that right now. Mm-hmm. You don't have to lie. You can say, I'm not going to have this conversation right now. I'm here for my mom because she's sick.
Yeah, just setting boundaries with the family.
What about when your mom, because on the hospital bed, they always prayer all the time. When they ask me to lead the prayer, what will I say?
When you're asked to lead the prayer?
Yeah, to lead the prayer. Mm. Because when they ask me to lead the prayer, I don't lead it, that's when everything will stop, and then I will start fighting.
Why not tell your mom how you feel about her? How
I told my mom. I told him
not like as in general, but as your quote unquote prayer. Look her in the eye and pray to her in a sense. Tell her what she means to you and how much, how important she is to you. That will be your version of a prayer, but it'll be directed towards her.
And not some God.
How does that strike you?
Yeah, I would do that, but I know they'll find out, from when I pray, somebody may just interrupt me because I know them. Somebody may just jump in and say, well, what am I talking about?
And most likely,
I'm not mentioning God, yeah?
Most likely their eyes will be closed, so they'll have no idea you're looking at her while you're saying this.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example. I think you should try that. Yeah. And then if they try and get into an argument afterwards, say, I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about how amazing my mom is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here for my mom. If you want to discuss this, let's set up a phone call when this is over, and we can go to the pub and talk about this. But I am currently here for my mom, and this is what's the most important thing for me right now.
Yeah, because the last time when my mom was sick, I went there. The day I went there, this priest came in the house and they light up candles. Mm-hmm. And then all of them, they wear white robes. They said they try to cast out demons for my mom. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I said, what about the money I've been sending them to buy medication? What is this demons from? The first day I came there, I nearly took out the candles and just threw everything outside. Just control myself. I went outside, just have a cigarette. I would just come. My heart was just pumping. Because my main reaction was just go there and just grab everything, all those candles, the light there with the incense, the burning,
That was absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was absolutely the right thing to do.
I
Yeah.
control myself. That was the first day I came there.
I'm glad you recognized that in you.
Yeah. It's a hard situation. But I would suggest reaching out to people in the Discord if you've got access to that. The link should be in the lower third. And then also calling back and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, I'll just try and listen. Anyway, thanks a lot for the advice. I think I'll take the advice that I just look at my mom and I tell him how I love her.
Oh,
yeah.
Everything. If they want to interrupt, okay, you go ahead. But I won't tell her those. I'm asking God to do this for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good plan. All right. Best of luck, and I hope your mom feels better.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
you guys
Ross.
are the best.
Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we are out of calls and wrapping up.
We cleared the board.
We cleared the board. Eric, it was so great to have you on.
A ton of fun.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
You're really good.
Thank you. I'll have to go and change my diapers after this. 'Cause I was like,
just in
maybe
time for
throw up and do it.
AXP.
Yes.
Show up again.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So I guess we're going to wrap up and then head over to the Discord. But first, we want to reach out and show you guys the crew cam, all those good people in the back of the room that make this happen.
Dude, we couldn't do this without them.
Nope, literally, we would be just talking to ourselves if it was not for them. And then for the audience, thank you guys so much. And
you guys.
Woo! Okay, so you've watched the show. You know how we sign off?
Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
Okay, I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
First, we've got love rings. I remember the love rings this time. I completely forgot them last time. So I'm getting better at this. All right. So for all of you who don't believe, this is your community. We're here for you. We love you guys. We know that the holidays are coming up and it's going to be hard for some of you to go home to interact with family who may not see you in the same way they used to and who may have that kind of tension. But, pop on a show, hop on the Discord. We're here for you. And for those of you who do believe,
we don't hate you.
We just think you're wrong.
Think you're wrong.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
No, you're done.